Education is at odds with the Teachers Federation over the government's education shake-up. The department says claims that 200 teaching positions will be lost to the Hunter don't add up.
For all the news, join us tonight at 6.
Today's Red Shield appeal launch was held at Market Square in the mall and followed a parade by the New South Wales Police Band, mounted police and local dignitaries who arrived by vintage cars. Commercial chairman of the appeal, Justin Davies, asked for volunteers for next Sunday's door knock. Already business groups have given the salvos $100,000, but the balance of the $297,000 target will hopefully be collected from the community. NBN's promotions manager, Peter Brown, presented a cheque from the company for $1,500 to kick along the appeal. A crowd of shoppers which braved today's conditions heard the Mayor of Lake Macquarie, Ivan Welsh, the Lady Mayoress of Newcastle, Mrs McNaughton, Morpeth and Anna Manzoni endorse the work of the Salvation Army, urging people to give generously. The Army will use the funds to pay for its social services and community work. Australia-wide, it houses nearly 7,000 people each night, providing more than 1.5 million meals a year. The salvos also visit thousands of people in hospital and handle 2,000 cases of missing people per year. In the Hunter, more is spent here by the Salvation Army than is raised. But Lieutenant Colonel Dudley Shott is confident the target can be reached.
Salvation Army has a very high profile and we thank God for that. I think that because our work is born out of love for God and because there is that caring compassion, which is the hallmark of Salvation Army service, people are very generous toward the Army.
For many years, cattle have been sold in broad categories, the buyer relying on an experienced eye to differentiate between good and bad within those groups. The system worked but had its drawbacks, including a lack of a common language accessible by other sections of the industry. According to the Senior Livestock Marketing Officer with the Meat Industry Authority, one of the main advantages of the AusMeat system is overcoming those communication problems.
It is a very good system. It's after all, we've finally got to act together that we're now reporting livestock and meat in the same language, whether it be producer or butcher.
In the AusMeat system, all cattle are scored on a fat and muscle grid. Muscling is measured down the grid, A denoting very heavy, through to E for light muscling. Similarly, a fat score is read across the grid. The fat, which may be estimated at either rump or ribs, ranges from 1 up to 2 millimetres of the rump through to 5, standing for 32 millimetres. There is a sixth column for more than 32 millimetres, but it is rarely used. A beast is defined simply by intersecting its fat column with its muscle row. For example, a moderately muscled steer with a rump fat depth of 12 to 22 millimetres is a D4. For some breeders, however, accustomed to measuring beasts by their own time-proven yardsticks, it is not easy to adapt to a grid dealing in millimetres. We asked Viv McGrath to take the theory into the field.
You're looking at an absolutely perfect example of a category that we call E1. Absolutely no fat whatsoever, and an old aged cow with no weight and no fat. And she's a Jersey that probably had a big calf taken off her, and she's a very aged cow that's lost her appetite, and therefore that's a prime example of what we would call an E1 cow. Lightly muscled with no fat.
Next assessed was another cow, better muscled with a slightly heavier fat covering.
This is a light boner cow, what you call in the trade a light boner cow, and that would fit into the E2 category, which is a very lightly muscled cow with just carrying a little bit of fat, not very much, about 2 to 5 millimetres of fat. It's not the real boner cow. You can get lighter cows in this category, which are sort of real light Friesians or Jersey cows they're called boner cows. With no fat whatsoever, but this cow has just a little bit of fat over the rump side.
Cows with a similar muscle depth, but with a rump fat covering of 12 to 24 millimetres were next in line.
These Hereford cows are an ideal D4, Cows haven't changed very much compared to the old description, with the old condition scoring compared to the present system of cows are the least affected of all. In other words, these cows were old 4-score condition. Well, they've now also fit into the D4 categories of moderately muscled and carrying 12 to 22 millimetres of fat of the rump side.
The most common offering at sale yards in the Hunter recently have been good solid steers put into the market to meet demand just before final finishing.
These are knocking on the door of your C4 class. And I mean, they're the medium muscle cattle, medium muscle steers, and they're just not quite in the C4 categories, which is that category there. But they're right on the line, just not quite finished, but if they had a bit more time, they would grow into the C4 category.
So it's the slight dip in the rump that you're picking up there?
Yes, but the muscle is the medium muscled, and the fat is on the C3, which is your 6 to 12 millimetres of fat. But another fortnight or 3 weeks to the paddock, they may have made the C4 category, but nevertheless the price will not be affected. They're not over fat cattle, they're very nicely finished.
With several more weeks, those steers would have looked like this: prime C4s with medium muscle and 12 to 22 millimetres of rump fat.
They're the only cattle I've seen in the yards this morning that are in that C4 range.
And how do you differentiate them from the borderline C3s, C4s?
Because they're rounded off in the rump, they're nicely muscled, and you can see around the rump side that they are carrying prime condition and just finished off nicely at the rump side.
Right, the very heavy muscle rows on the grid are used less often, applying only to feedlot fatted steers, bullocks or bulls, although the latter is generally described based on live weight basis. The Ausmeat system has had its critics, but according to Mr McGrath, is being introduced in every state in Australia and is here to stay. He says despite difficulty convincing some breeders, it is a system which will benefit them in the long run. Is it likely to help at all in Australia's export markets as well?
Yes, that's it'll be a big benefit there, especially on heavy cattle. Heavy cows and heavy bullocks will be described on as in thickness of fat, and that'll help our export in terms of description.
They have very specific requirements.
They have very specific requirements, and even our local trade cattle are getting like that now, with some supermarkets are specifying that they want medium muscle cattle, so much weight and so much fat. And we can produce that in the sale yards, or the producer can, to the article that supermarkets want.
School students from throughout the region are taking to the stage at the Hunter Institute of Higher Education this week. They're taking part in the 3rd annual Hunter Region Schools Dance Festival. It started today and continues tomorrow.
For all the news, join us tonight at 6.
Health Minister Peter Collins has moved to reassure lower Hunter communities they won't come second best under the new Area Health Board proposal. He was in town today to open the new telethon driller units for Hunter cancer patients and their families.
For all the news, join us tonight at 6.
Nervous tots waiting outside the Griffith Duncan Theatre at the Hunter Institute will become a familiar sight during the next 24 hours. Students from 25 primary and high schools are showing off their skills. Some are of state competition standard. Enthusiastically approaching the techniques of another culture today were youngsters from the Hamilton Primary School who performed an Indian dance. It was back to the bush with some toe-tapping from Fennell Bay Primary School students, accompanied by a crowd-clapping audience of family and friends. vital steps. Dances featured in the festival range from bush to ballet, with modern and traditional styles represented. Performances are being given tonight and tomorrow at 10:30am and 7pm. No doubt those who catch a show will enjoy it as much as the young performers.
Autonomy Day is the celebration of the official sanctioning of Newcastle University with its autonomy from the University of New South Wales in 1965. A broad range of student pranks were organised by the Revolutionary Committee, a group which took over from the Student Representatives Council for the day. High-tech billy carts were raced through the university grounds. Student Ironmen say that cold meat pies with Tabasco sauce and homemade wine, and the bagpipes wailed the notes of rebellion. The major event of the day was the scavenger hunt, with items ranging from road signs to garden gnomes, dogs, chooks and parking meters. But it didn't stop there. Several Newcastle personalities were kidnapped and put up for ransom, including the Lord Mayor and his deputy, and NBN's newsreader, Ray Deneen. Teams were awarded points for their acquisitions.
But we give marks for ingenuity, imagination, wit. If we can find any ingenuity, imagination or wit, which is unusual on a university campus.
How many points is Ray Deneen worth?
Very few, I'm afraid. Very, very few.
All the money raised is for charity, and organisers say that all items borrowed shall be returned.
On Newsnight this week, tension within the state's education system. 96 teachers are to be lost from the Hunter in a massive shake-up planned by Education Minister Metherell. The teachers and students look set for a fight.
What's the point of having kids in a nice new building if there's a reduction in the courses that they're going to offer?
As the state government hit a political nerve it will regret, should school students be encouraged to take militant action?
Police believe the culprits broke through a front window into an office and from there helped themselves. Guns and uniforms were safely locked up, but this morning police found they were short one flashlight and one portable radio similar to these. Police say the break-in is especially ironic considering they're encouraging clean-up figures for similar offences in the neighbourhood.
Well, it is rather embarrassing. Just recently we've been caught a number of people for breaking and enters around the area, and it is rather embarrassing to have it happen to us.
Late this afternoon, gardeners were trimming back shrubs in the station's gardens as part of a new security drive.
The sale of CSR's share of the Drayton mine will lift Shell Australia's long-standing interest in the venture from 39 to 83%, the remaining 17% being retained by Japanese interests. A spokesman for Shell said all staff at Drayton will be retained and no major changes in the operation of the colliery are expected. Shell Australia has also bought their 50% of the Leamington mine, formerly held by CSR, which is selling its coal interests to concentrate on sugar and building products. The other half of Leamington will be retained by Esso. Total value of the sale, which includes the Callide colliery in Queensland and exploration interests Australia-wide, is $230 million. CSR has also agreed to sell its 32.8% shareholding in Port Waratah Coal Services to Coal and Allied Industries Limited for $36 million. This brings Coal and Allied's holding in the labour operation to 45.3%. By far the biggest shareholder, along with R.W. Miller, Pico Walton, Australian Mining Investments Limited, a small public company, Bloomfield Colliery and Japanese interests. These other shareholders have preemptive rights on the CSR shares and are not expected to increase their holdings. Port Waratah management says it welcomes Coal and Allied's increased investment. Being the largest exporter of coal in Australia, it ensures the facility will continue to be run in the best interests of the industry. Other local interest in the CSR jumble sale is the purchase by BHP of Aquila Steel, a nationwide reinforcing steel and fencing supplier with a factory and sales centre at Bennett's Green.
Was to have been shared by 2 planes today, but due to a few small service difficulties, one of the Hornets did the celebrating on the ground. Not that that put a damper on the occasion, not even the enthusiastic efforts of the base firefighters could do that when embarking on a special ceremony known as the wetting, a rare honour reserved for a great aircraft.
It's a wonderful aircraft, it's done very well. 3.5 or so years, we've had 105, and 1,000 hours is a pretty good gain.
Wing Commander Roger Clark, himself a veteran of 5,000 flying hours, believes the Hornet is the greatest thing to happen to our tactical fighting force, thanks to its amazing ability to keep abreast of the times.
It's run by modern computers, most of it, so this is a different jet from what it was 1,000 hours ago when we first started flying it. We've updated the software in the system, which means we can change the flight controls or the radars or the mission equipment, etc. And therefore we can modify and stay up with current technology.
Since arriving at Williamtown in September '85, both Hornets have worked 5 days a week on fighter pilot training. But Wing Commander Clark says even that everyday routine can't take away from the thrill of sitting in that cockpit.
Magnificent. Magnificent. I think it's about the best we could get for Australia, and it's a real fighter pilot's machine. It is extremely capable.
Good afternoon, I'm Ross Hampton. Drink drivers across the state stand a much greater risk of being caught this weekend than usual. All available police random breath testing units will be out on the roads in the state's biggest ever combined police operation.
For all the news, join us tonight at 6.
The sacking stems from Shelford's non-appearance at a training run with the Knights. He had been told by Rest of the World coach Graham Lowe that if he returned to Newcastle, he would be omitted from the World team to play Australia. The Knights board also decided that for missing training, the subsequent non-appearance at the Newcastle Manly game and failing to communicate with the club, he would be fined $500. With no hard feelings, it was agreed between Shelford and the Knights that his contract for the rest of the season would be cancelled, and the option for his services in 1989 would not be exercised. Shelford will undergo a knee operation next week.
From the night. 10 months ago, Don Cullen and local railway buffs set about restoring the 124-year-old Morpeth railway platform. Thanks to a $1,000 bicentennial grant and the help of railway staff and several prisoners from Cessnock Corrective Centre, the station is now a growing tourist attraction. The award is an occasional tribute given only to projects of outstanding quality. Regional Manager of Passenger Services Barry Smith said this is the second time it's been presented in the Hunter. Mr Cullen says the award marks the beginning of new ideas.
You say, I'll stop here, that's as far as I'm going. I won't go any further. the next thing you know, somebody else will bring in an old trike or somebody else will bring in an old lamp and, oh, you'll put that there, that'll be far enough, and it just keeps going, it's still going.
Further down the track, the Morpeth Post Office is celebrating its 150th birthday. Australia Post has prepared a display of souvenirs from the everyday lives of postmasters spanning 1.5 centuries. Among the artefacts, a letter to head office dating from the late 1800s. In it, the postmaster requests an assistant for the workload. According to the letter, it's not uncommon for him to work from 7 in the morning until well after midnight. The building stands as a monument to a time when Morpeth was a boom town with high hopes for the future.
Morpeth was an incredibly booming port here. It used to supply most of the Hunter with its goods and most of Sydney with its coal, produce, etc. And the post office now has sort of shrunk right back, but it certainly would be today one of the oldest post office services left operating in Australia.
Historic Morpeth is enjoying a double celebration. While Australia Post salutes the town's 150-year-old mail service, the State Rail Authority is paying tribute to restoration work at Morpeth Rail Platform.
For all the news, join us tonight at 6.
Officials and guests from the Jasmine Lions Club and the Red Cross met last night in the Union Building at the University of Newcastle. Miles Hay, the area administrator of the Red Cross, said the mannequins will be put to good use. In the last 12 months, more than 1,000 people have undergone Red Cross first aid courses in the Lower Hunter. Also, during the evening, a cheque for more than $3,000 was donated by the Lions Club to Camp Quality, a group which tries to improve the quality of life for terminally ill children.
Angry residents of Windale have staged a rally in protest of what they call a slur on their suburb. They're organising a public meeting to uncover the facts behind allegations that family breakdown, drug-taking and violence are rife in the neighbourhood.
For all the news, join us tonight at 6.